Okay, so afternoon year 11s. So geography is a dynamic subject. It's always moving, it's always changing, it's always updating. Okay, and so it's really important to stay up to date with all these news stories. And at the minute we're learning about resources. Or three resources you need to learn. You need to learn about water, food, and energy in the UK, and in the world. After that, we specialize specifically on one of those resources. So the case study we do for this unit is energy. In the case of energy, we've been looking at the UK's energy mix over the last few lessons. We've been looking at how to make our energy more secure and where the UK should invest in the future. So I wanted to do a little summary video on the UK's fossil fuel industry, what's in the news, and what implications this has for the future. So give a little bit of a kind of quick fire round on the UK's gas industry. You've got it on the graph here from the Offshore Energy UK company. About 38% of our gas is from domestic production, 42% is imported from the rest of Europe, and 22% is imported via LNG, or liquefied natural gas, which is through oil tankers who come from further afield. We've got some pipelines that go to Belgium, to the Netherlands, to Norway. And about overall, our gas output in the UK has decreased by about 80%. Is expected to decrease by 80% by 2030 because there's less and less oil and gas in the North Sea, and our consumption is growing bigger and bigger and bigger, along with the annual gas demand for the country as the population grows. Okay, so our demand is going up, the supply is going down. We're becoming more and more insecure from a gas fossil fuel point of view. That means that the fossil fuels have been in the news. More specifically, there's been a huge push by the government to increase the level of oil and gas production in the North Sea. The North Sea's got about 300 active oil and gas fields. About half of them are expected to be decommissioned by 2030, which is in 7 years' time, because they'll have run out. Securing gas and electricity supply is really important for the UK's energy security, especially with countries like Russia using resources as a weapon, geopolitical weapon, as Ukraine being the case in point at the minute. So why it's been in the news? Because in 2023, in September of this year, the government allowed the development of Rosebank offshore near the Shetland Islands. It's been approved by regulators. It's located 80 miles southwest of the Shetlands. Rosebank, once open, will be the UK's largest oil field. It's currently untapped, but it's currently the largest untapped oil field with about 300 million barrels of oil locked under the seabed. Opening it will improve our energy security. It'll provide 1,600 jobs during construction. Those who support the project say that about 450 UK-based jobs will be generated during its lifetime, and it will generate a high amount of tax revenue for the UK government. In total, at its heights of production, it's expected that 69,000 barrels of oil will be able to be produced per day, along with 44 million cubic feet of gas per day in the first 10 years. After that, obviously, that would decline because they'd get harder to access and the fossil fuels. Talking to the BBC, the Energy Security Secretary actually mentioned that it wouldn't necessarily bring our gas prices down or energy prices down. What it would do is it would make us more secure, less reliant on rogue states like Russia, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia, and actually help us to boost our tax revenue and therefore invest in public services. That's what the government's saying to the press. What it means for the future, the honest answer is it brings a complete wrecking ball to the whole UK's climate pledge. The government's made a pledge, and it's written in law that by 2050 we're going to achieve something called net zero. Net zero means we'll no longer be adding greenhouse gases into our atmosphere. It doesn't mean we won't be releasing greenhouse gases. It means that we won't be adding greenhouse gases, so that the ones we do add will be absorbed by carbon capture or carbon sequestration policies. Okay, so the idea is that yes, we might emit CO2, but we're able to absorb those, so we won't be emitting any net greenhouse gases. Okay. Obviously, the UK government says that we still need to use oil and gas to meet our energy needs because our needs are growing, and therefore they're going to combine the production of oil and gas with with more sustainable approaches to reduce absorb more carbon into the ground, in essence. Okay, the Committee on Climate Change that advises the government has basically been categorically clear. They've said that the expansion of fossil fuel is not in line with the policy of net zero by 2050, and that while we might need oil and gas to reach net zero, in itself doesn't justify opening new oil fields and giving new licenses for new fossil fuel development. We can use oil and gas, but what we do have, and preferably gas, because it emits less than CO2 than oil. The governments argue that actually, well, it would using our own gas would be less energy, would be more energy efficient than importing gas from abroad, because that would emit more CO2, and also makes us reliant on hostile foreign regimes like Russia or Qatar. So a debate there. Governments saying that it's good for energy security and tax revenue. Advisor to the government on climate change saying that it basically breaches our promise of being carbon net zero by 2050. All this is worth keeping in mind when you asked in this unit to discuss it what the UK should be investing in. We looked at renewable energy like tidal, wind, and solar. We also looked at nuclear, which is technically recyclable, not necessarily renewable or fossil fuel. So lots of different aspects, but it's worth that the UK currently is investing in fossil fuels, despite what we know about climate change.